get to some questions submitted by our WCPO 9 News viewers and readers. Let's start with this one. I've heard about some schools where teachers just can't reach some parents and students. What percentage of your students have been so far unreachable, and what are you doing to try to contact them? What can you do? Let's start with you, Dr. Webb.
We've been blessed. We're a small school district. We've been able to reach all but maybe 10 students and their parents. But we constantly reach out to them via what's called Dojo. We've reached out to them via final forms. We've made calls. And in some cases, we've even gone to their homes to see if, that they need some assistance. Maybe their phones aren't working. So we've had very few students unaccounted for, but we've been very vigilant looking for them too, because that's one of my big concerns, is that kids will go missing.
Absolutely. And we've talked so much about the concern about abuse, because the teachers and staff can't see what's going on. And I have to tell you, this has been the most troubling part for me. I just worry about the lost kids.
Right, kids being hungry.
Yeah.
So in some respects, we might be their final line in defense. Our teachers are very connected to our kids because we have very small classes, so they oftentimes know their parents and grandparents because they may have taught them. So it's been challenging, but we've risen to that occasion.
Mr. Smith, I'll go to you next. If you had to knock on a student's door, the family, do you send the police? Do you send a teacher? With the social distancing issues, have you been in this position of having to search out a child?
Well, yes, we've actually had to search out several children, and we've been very successful. As I mentioned earlier, we started with teacher professional development 2 weeks before we started our remote learning with our students. So teachers have been reaching out for several weeks, making contact with students. We still have our truancy people, and we make contact with the kids through our truancy department.
Okay.
And not to create a storm, but to bring them back into an existence that says, here's an educational opportunity for you, and we want to make sure we provide all the necessary services with the Chromebooks, the meals, and all the support that the staff continuously given.
What a job to oversee that. And before we go to you, Dr. Webb, Mr. Garrison. I'm trying to change up my list and put y'all in different order. Do you, when we talk about these kids that we have to search out and truancy versus, just the nature of what our society is going through right now, at what level, at what point do you get concerned that there is abuse going on? How do you handle that? How much of your time is eaten up by this issue that is, obviously very troubling?
Well, actually, we have been very intentional about going out and checking on our kids. Kids involved in summer school, we did some things such as porch drops this past summer to drop food off, to drop toiletries, to notebooks, schools things, summer school things. So we've been making it a very concerted effort to get out and find our kids. As a matter of fact, earlier this week, I was out knocking on doors because we had to get some of our MacBooks back to get them prepared and get them ready for this school year. So we try to keep a pulse on our kids and try to get out there and find them where they are, just to check on them, make sure they're doing well. And this past, like I said, this first week and some of last week, we were inviting kids and families to the campuses to pick up the necessary paperwork or MacBooks or things like that, and just to check on them. So just not so much looking for abuse, but not closing our eyes to that, but just they're worried about their whole well-being.
Yeah, making sure they have what they need. Let me get to the next question. This person says, I am concerned with the difference between the online learners and the in-school learners' education. For instance, my children go in person and my neighbor is doing online. The online students are doing nothing this week while my kids are reviewing in class and attending online. on Wednesday. Now, I will tell you, a friend of mine had her children in schools. The wheels fell off financially. So what do I do here now? Put them online, and now not only are they able to go online to take their courses from home, but they're getting some college credits. She's actually liking that, but she's on top of it at home and making sure things are getting done. A lot of it is how much is the parent being the advocate. I know that you see this day to day, but before there was ever a pandemic, what's the difference between the in-person and the online? What's your level of concern? All right, Mr. Garrison, you go first this time.
Well, I'm hoping we will do better than we did last year. We're hoping that with each day we get better, and each month we get better, and we'll be better in December than we were in September. So right now our focus is, again, making sure we connect with our kids, we encourage, we in these first 2 weeks develop those relationships. Now, we're not saying they're excused from assignments. Some of their assignments are around get to know you, what are their hobbies and things, until we work through making sure all kids have the technology they need as well as the internet access. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Mr. Smith, we'll go to you. Do you have kids that have never fooled with a laptop before, and you're having to teach them real basic stuff? How much of that is going on?
Well, those are good points, because we had to teach some of the children how to become integrated with the equipment. Teachers have been very, very, very intentional about that process, and parents have been extremely supportive and very, very helpful. Of course, we've been using technology for several years, and one of the things that we found out, we have, since we're a project-based learning institution, some of our kids have actually been able to integrate their lessons and help support their colleagues by teaching them the mechanical interest of what happens with the equipment. So it's not just the teachers and the staff, it's students supporting students, because many of the students will have to launch projects and have other groups working in order to complete the project on time. So there's collaboration between students that makes it that much more rewarding for us.
Let me ask, staying on this subject, Dr. Webb, when you talk about the technology, is there a little part of you that is kind of excited? We have access to more technology now. We have it in the hands of our kids. We might not have had as much of this otherwise. Is there a positive to this?
Absolutely. Technology has been a great equalizer for the kids. We, like Mr. Smith, did intensive professional development with our staff 6 days before the kids came back, and the teachers have said it has made them so much more in tune with what the kids are looking at and doing online, and the kids have showed them how to do things. My science teachers have worked really hard, because we can't share things this year, that the Chromebooks have allowed them to go further and deeper into subjects than they had anticipated. So the technology has been wonderful, but for some people it has been a challenge, and so we continue to work with those who need more support.
Sure.
And
sure.
Yes.
Are you able to send people to the home to say, here's where you press this here? Because I need somebody standing over me to learn technology. But I'm old, you know.
Unfortunately, no. We don't, unfortunately, in this environment, send people out to the students' homes.
So it really has to be, you have to be able to talk to them virtually and just guide them through it the best you can. Yeah, it's tough. It's
That's
tough.
correct.
Let's get to our next question. How will you handle social distancing for situations like fire drills or active shooter drills? That's a good question we got from a viewer. Who wants to go first? So we'll start with you this time, Dr. Webb.
What we've done is we've already had our first fire drills, and we've done it by grade levels. We've done it by classroom bell periods to try and keep the social distancing. We have not done an active shooter drill yet, so that will be a work in progress. But we have done the fire drills, and they've gone better than we'd hope, but probably not as good as we need for them to go.
All right, Dr. Webb. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, you're next.
Yes, all of our teachers have been fully trained in the emergency prep work regarding active shooters, fire drills, tornado drills, and everything that you can imagine. We're just waiting to bring our kids back through a blended experience so that we can, make sure that we initiate all those corrective actions with them as well. So our teachers are ready. They are ready to go. They've been prepared for several weeks now, and hopefully, we'll go through our process and assess ourselves every 5 weeks and make a determination of what course of action to take for our next transition, which will be in increments of 5 and 10.
Right, and Superintendent Garrison, let me ask a follow-up question on this. When you talk about, having to leave the building to do this and the various things, even going to lockers, you can't socially distance when the lockers are right next to each other. And then these times when kids might get excited because it's something different and something fun. Have you coached your teachers and staff about how to make sure the kids, have those positive moments, but always bearing in mind the need to behave in a way that is safe?
Well, yes, we've trained the teachers, and each part of our reopening plan, each school had to take from the district plan, had to develop their own specific plan to their school because each school has differences. And so schools have marked the hallways, showing where, what's proper social distancing. We've also, got our desks set apart, and in our cafeterias, they've marked that. Even set up gyms to where that could be an alternative cafeteria to feed kids. So, yes, there will be plenty of signage, plenty of guided instruction, and again, we can't wait to get our kids back to put our plans into action and then adjust if needed.
One thing that I was concerned about, and my daughter has now been back in and had a couple of days, the orientation, and has now had her first day in class, is wearing the mask constantly. What are your plans for? I spoke to a pediatrician, and again, we've covered this extensively on Good Morning Tri-State, just trying to hit every angle of this. And what this pediatrician said was, there are going to be kids, and we're all different, that just need a break from the mask. And they should be allowed to walk into the corner of the room away from everybody and remove it and take a breath if that's their situation. And I said, okay, well, let's tell the superintendent. What do you think about that? How do you police that at school and make sure that it's not taken advantage of, but that teachers and students get a break if they need it? Mr. Smith, you go first on this one.
Okay, thank you. I was waiting patiently.
You're such a polite class. Go ahead.
But I think it's very interesting that you bring that up. Right now, as I mentioned, I'm having roundtable conversations with all of my staff. And one of the things that I learned from them, they're saying, Superintendent, our kids will need a break because we need a break. And I think that one of the things that we have been very, very fortunate about at Winton Woods City Schools is our adults model the behavior. And modeling the behavior of when to take a break and take the mask off in order to kind of recapture your spirit and your thought is something that our teachers have been talking about doing. So I think if our teachers continue to model the behavior as well as the rest of our staff, I think our children will be fine.
Very good. All right, I'm going to go now to Superintendent Garrison. I want to get to kind of some nitty gritty here. Depending on what happens with the number of cases and the spread and so forth, do you have a sense of how things might change in terms of in-person versus hybrid? Have you had conversations with your staff about where do you think this is going? Where do you think we're going to be here in a few months, maybe January, February, March?
Well, again, right now our goal is to try to get our kids back in school in some capacity, whether it's hybrid or all of our kids there at once. But with the understanding that as we move forward, we're going to have to think about some form of testing, some form of, just checking the pulse of our kids. Now, we will have temperature checks daily for all the adults and all of our students. But at some point, I think we're going to have to get to some manner of testing, volunteer testing. Not quite sure how that's going to look, but I think that will help us keep a pulse on
how things are going. Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, what say you on that? Do you feel like in the coming months you're going to have a better handle on all of this and knowing what we have and how we can proceed?
Yes, I do. And we are working collaboratively with a company, LJB, and they are a company that works on pandemic preparedness, and they work on situations that how to deal with viruses and different things that happen. It's a company that has a extensive military background. They've worked on all types of operations overseas and in different countries. And we found them by just kind of checking the pulse with some of our other colleagues. Actually, it was our treasurer who located them and brought the information to me. And we are just reviewing our planning report for Winton Woods City Schools, where they've gone into every building. And Julie, one of the things that they have just kind of been able to manufacture is, in the event that there is an outbreak, you very well may not have to close your entire district because of some of the cluster tracking as well as contact tracing that they've actually talked about could be put in place. So we're very, very excited that we have a professional company that's coming in, giving us some other insight before we launch our blended operations in the future.
And there's an example right there, Superintendent Smith, of you found something really great by talking to other colleagues. We just have a couple minutes left. I want to start with you, Dr. Webb. Is there one thing or something you really want to make sure we mention tonight that maybe you learned from another district that you want to put out there to your colleagues? That's good, that's working.
I think we have learned that we need the support of the other superintendents and district people, because they will have thought of something maybe in a different way than my team might have, and they've been able to give me any help in supporting that concept. For instance, in flow charting. We did develop a flow chart. Another district said, yes, but you might want to add this concept to it, and it's been fabulous. And so
very good.
The collegiality, and also I'll tell you the other thing that has helped me tremendously is the cooperation of the Hamilton County Board of Health. They have come in and answered questions for us, told us ideas, for instance, on making sure we have seating charts in multiple locations, so if something happens, we can react quickly. So I'm very appreciative of all that help.
Very good. Mr. Garrison, how about you? One thing or two things you've learned or something that's really working well you want the world to know?
Well, I think collaboration is the key. Collaboration among districts, collaboration with the Department of Health, collaboration with the Department of Education. All that's been instrumental in us trying to get back to in-person classes. One thing that I did learn that I took away from another district in our state is the idea that when you think about kids having to wear a mask, and those kids that may have some medical reason as to why not wear a mask, well, how could you prevent that kid from going all day long without people asking why they wear masks? And so we got the idea of maybe putting a little wristband on their arm to say that, hey, they're okay, so that they're not being worried to death by every teacher they see as to why they may not be wearing a mask at that point. So I thought that was a great idea. Again, look forward to try to implement it.
Yeah, and you all have always, as superintendents, you didn't get to where you are without talking to other people and finding out what's working and trying to implement different things. And boy, you've had your jobs cut out for you. So again, thank you for all that you've done. Do you have any concern, before we go, we have just a little bit of time, that we're going to see more kids going to different kinds of learning, be it strictly online, some kind of pod learning as we talked about earlier, or homeschooling? Do you think teachers will leave for other kinds of opportunities to teach differently? Is this on your radar at all? We'll start with you, Mr. Smith.
Well, yeah, of course, it's on the radar. Right now, I think our position is we are going to educate kids with fidelity, and giving people the proper tools and the proper guidelines along the way is going to make our jobs that much more compelling. I think that there are struggles along the way, just like any superintendent in any district. I applaud my colleagues for being on this broadcast, as well as other superintendents across the state, that it's a big job, and I think we are in this thing together. And I think our kids are being very intentional about, how do I make sure that my responsibility of being educated appropriately, I'm in my class at the right time. I'm connecting my computer. I'm connecting with my parents about the essential ingredients of how to make this thing better. So I know it's going to change, but I'd like to really quickly, Julie, give a real shout out to Hamilton County ESC, Chad Hilliker, for arranging superintendent meetings every single Friday, and for the commissioner, Greg Kesterman, and also the epidemiologist, Dr. Fagan. These guys have been wonderful. And I know that Dr. Webb is on those calls with me every Friday, but they are making our job that much easier to endure.
Dr. Webb, we got 20 seconds. I'll give you the last word. What message do you have for parents about trusting the schools to do this right for the kids?
We are trying to do what's right for the kids. We do want your input. We want your ideas. We want your suggestions, because believe it or not, we do listen, and when possible, we implement. We want your kids to be safe and successful, and giving us the chance to do that, I think we will be very successful with parental support.
Superintendents Webb, Smith, Garrison, thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing to protect our teachers and students, and try to get us through such a difficult time. We appreciate you being with us on this panel, and hopefully we all learned a little bit from each other, and our friends at home got a little something from it too. And we'll try to do this again. And that'll do it for our WCPO 9 News special, Safely Back to School, Where We Go From Here. Have a good night.